Okay, we're going to be going live here shortly. Checking in with the updates on now TD Tropical Depression 10. It's officially upgraded this afternoon. I've got a few viewers checking in. So again, as always, if you're watching, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Like to get a feel for where everybody's at, so I can kind of hone in on those areas and talk about some of those things. I've got Ashley checking in from Pensacola. Welcome, Ashley. Thanks for joining in on the broadcast. Kimberly's in here. Kimberly in the house. Good friend of mine. There, I believe in Daytona, still sent some stars my way. That's greatly appreciated. Bravo Zulu to you, Kimberly. Thank you. Hope everything's well over there. We're going to start the broadcast just a moment. As always, if you want us to support the page like Kimberly did, you can go ahead and send some stars. That's always greatly appreciated. I don't do this for any kind of money, so I spend some time on looking at these forecasts and trying to keep those in the path of the storm safe and get them the information that they need. Got Ginger checking in from Sarasota. Welcome, Ginger. Thank you for the support. Kimberly saying, hey, yes, we are doing well. Good to hear. Good to see everybody in here. Okay, while we get started, I'm just coming back from work, so again, I said I would check in on the latest with TD10. Okay. Also, we're streaming on YouTube now, so if you are looking to maybe head on over to YouTube and subscribe, that'd be cool, because you can go to your TV, use your YouTube app on your smartphone, watch it on your couch, maybe have a little bit of mineral water like I'm having. Cheers to everybody out there. And watch the Bearded Weatherman, or, sometimes you got those little screens when I'm talking, I'm showing things on these images, and then, big drawn on things, and with the, if you watch on the YouTube, you can see that pretty clearly on your smart TV. So anyway, cheers to everybody out there. Good to see everybody. So we're gonna get started. Got Levi checking in from Waycross, Georgia. Let's see. I got Terry checking in, saying, "Hey all, looks like Levi is working." So I just got off work, Levi. So welcome in. We'll get started here in just a second. And yeah, let's get started. So here we go. This is TD10. Now we have TD10. We talked about it this morning. We talked about how I was seeing some signs of organization and a good circulation to this storm, and I predicted it would be soon upgraded to a tropical depression. And so now here we go. Here it is. You can see it spinning around here counterclockwise, as always, right around the low pressure. We got some pretty good convection around the core here, but overall kind of raggedy. Not extremely organized. It's again still a tropical depression. It is also nighttime, so not much heating going on to get that air moving upward. That could convection to form those thunderstorms. So right now, not the greatest presentation, but this storm is expected to gain strength very soon. All right, so that's just checking on the satellite. A couple of other things. You can see good outflow here. See these wispy clouds here, like horsetails. That's cirrus clouds. Those are icy clouds, the very top layers of the atmosphere, or the troposphere, I should say, very top of the storm, indicating a tropical system with outflow is a good indication of some kind of tropical system. So again, it is definitely a tropical cyclone at this point. All right, let's look at the latest. Let's see if we got the latest update. Yep, as of the 10 p.m. advisory. Looks like a couple changes from the previous one. So this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center. I'm updating you live now with the latest as of the 10 p.m. Central Advisory. That's, of course, 11 p.m. there on the East Coast. And now you do see hurricane expected to form by Tuesday morning and then continue on as a hurricane through Tuesday evening, and then making some type of landfall. Another change here. If you notice, this track cone has shifted southward a little bit. You notice that? You notice the cone has shifted right from the previous advisory, the first advisory. So what's that mean? Well, that means potentially Central Florida impact, or more Central Florida impacts from this storm. So that is a change. I kind of expected that change, as the Euro has kind of been on the right side of most of the guidance. The Euro model we'll show you here in a minute, but the good old Euro model, a very reliable model, kind of taking the storm in a little bit over here. We'll look at that model in a second, just get the latest updates on that. But again, you see a shift to the right towards Central Florida. Here's Tampa, right? So this cone now encompassing much of Central Florida, at least most of West Central Florida, and over into Apalachicola over here on the western side. So a very large swath of the state of Florida now under this cone. Again, this is the cone uncertainty. We don't know where this hurricane is going to make landfall, unfortunately, at this point. It's too early to tell, but this is a good area to really be on the lookout. And again, this could shift in the future. We've seen this with other storms. We see this all the time. So if you're in that cone, you should be making preparations. It's still too early to tell here, guys. I mean, as far as the strength, and we'll look at that in a second. But again, if you're in this cone, you should be making preparations, especially along the coasts here, for potentially even a major hurricane at this point, a Category 3 and above. It's definitely possible. Definitely very warm water there in the Gulf, and so we'll go on and look at some of the model guidance. So here we go. This is the latest American modeling with some of the hurricane models. You see here's the kind of further right side, all this guidance. So again, you see the cone sort of in there, and then over here. So most of the guidance kind of clustering around that Big Bend area as far as the American guidance is going. Let's take a look at the Euro here. Check in on the comments while I'm doing that. People are talking about how they need rain in Central Florida, and look, I always say there's rain and then there's rain. There's gradual rain that's good, and there's flooding rain. And with a stronger hurricane, as you saw last year with Ian in Central Florida, there was flooding going on. So yes, we all need rain, but don't forget that these tropical systems can dump a ton of rain on you in a very short period of time and cause flooding. So you want to be on guard for those sorts of hazards with any kind of tropical system. I hear a little rain outside here in Utah. It's actually raining a little bit outside there. Doesn't happen all that often here, especially not nearly as often as you see there in Central Florida. I know it hasn't been raining as much there, but you definitely see more rainfall than northern Utah for sure. All right, here is the latest from the Euro. Again, you see kind of that Big Bend area being targeted. You do see some guidance over here to the right. So again, that cone did kind of shift a little bit towards Florida, or towards Central Florida, I should say. And so there's the latest from the Euro and the American modeling, kind of clustering in on the Big Bend. But we got to take this with a grain of salt. I say it a lot on this page, and I'm going to continue to say it, that we've got some aircraft that are going to head out there tomorrow. Okay, we're going to have the hurricane hunters flying through the storm, taking readings. That is going to tell us a lot more about this system. Okay, and once we have that information, we're going to be able to give better predictions. We're going to have better forecast modeling for this storm. So it's too early to tell on a lot of things with this storm still, and we'll look at some of those factors right now, actually. So let's see. We'll go to the models. But again, once we have some of that, more of that data coming in, we'll be better able to understand more about what this system is like and what it will ultimately do. So let's go ahead and look first at the Euro. This is the latest run from this afternoon, Saturday, right? So we're going to zoom in on the areas that we're talking about here. Okay, there's the storm down there. And here is the guidance. So it's showing, again, sort of like you saw in the forecast track. We go forward in time. There's Tuesday, you see potentially a hurricane there, tropical storm, something like that. Intensity guidance is kind of iffy these a few days out like this, 3-4 days out. So the strength of the storm, these models don't do very well at this point. It's a little too early to tell for that. But in any case, you see kind of the track it's predicting. Again, you saw it with that the spaghettis kind of towards that Big Bend area. Now let's look at some of the factors in play right now. Where our question marks are right now. This is really going to tell us a lot about what's going to ultimately end up happening with this storm and how strong it'll be, especially. So again, we've got the hurricane hunters going out tomorrow. They're going to take some readings. We'll get a little bit more information. But right now, what we see here on the Euros, see these brown areas? This is dry air here in the mid levels. This is 700 millibars up to 300 millibars, or hectopascals as it's called in meteorology. We have all kinds of terms we throw around. But this is, this is about, say, around 10,000 feet up to, say, 30,000 feet in the atmosphere, okay? Those levels. And we're measuring how much humidity, how much relative humidity, or how much moisture is available in the atmosphere for one of these storms to use. We definitely need a lot of moisture, as you see down here with these green values, right? With with TD10 right now. You see the green values. That's a lot of there's high RH values, high relative humidity values in the upper levels and mid levels for this storm to use and to grow, I guess, or maintain its strength. But in any case, you see the brown areas up here, and so let's go forward. So that's kind of the area that this storm would have to go through at this point, at least if these models are accurate. So let's go forward. So you see already right here, you see how the green is sort of restricted to this side of the storm, whereas over here on the western periphery, it's drier. Okay, that means most of the rainfall and thunderstorms associated with it will be on this side. So that's not what you want to see for a strong tropical system. You want to see something like this with Franklin. This is a hurricane over here. You want to see uniform moisture wrapped around the core, okay? You want that dry air to be isolated from the core of the storm, all right? You don't want to be able to let that in. You want to create a wall as a tropical system to keep that moisture out. Pardon me, that dry air out. That's called dry air entrainment in tropical meteorology. You don't want to entrain or suck that dry air in. You want to, obviously, a tropical system very moist, right? Lots of rain. So moisture is very important to a tropical system. So we see that this is kind of taking off sort of the side of that storm, at least according to the Euro right now. And again, what ultimately happens with this dry air here is going to determine a lot. As you can see, it sort of shrugs it off by the time it might potentially make landfall. So if this is accurate, maybe you see some strengthening in towards land here as it sucks up that very warm water as it uses for its energy source. If maybe that dry air kind of gets shrugged off, and again you see it kind of wrapping that moisture around the core of the system. So that's the question, right? A couple questions. We've got ultimately, will this system, let's get back to the satellite. Will this system move over the Yucatan here? And I'll draw the Yucatan for you. You can kind of see it here. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, here it is. See the Yucatan? There's the Yucatan. It's really hard to tell. But that's the Yucatan Peninsula, of course, in Mexico. So we're going to be watching as meteorologists. Is this storm going to ultimately move more over this land here, this body of land? And that is bad for a tropical system. That will cause friction, and that will ultimately degrade or weaken a tropical system. That's a question mark. Or how much is this, how much time will this system ultimately spend over this very warm water here in the northern Caribbean or the northwestern Caribbean? If you look at some of our ocean heat content, or very warm water in the very top layer of the ocean surface that hurricanes or tropical systems utilize to strengthen and to maintain their intensity, you see very high values here, right? Very red shades, that's very high ocean heat content. That means that the water itself, the top of the ocean for the first 300 feet or 100 meters in depth is warm. uniformly down all the way down to 300 feet. Very warm. It's been baking in the sun all summer long, right? Water takes much longer to heat up, has a much higher specific heat capacity, so that means it takes a lot longer to heat, right? Think of a boiling pot of water. That side of that pot, that metal, is going to be much hotter quicker when you turn on the stove versus the water, which of course, watch pot never boils, right? It takes a while to get that water to heat up. And so that's what's been happening all summer. So again, if it kind of meanders down there and stays down in these areas, then it's going to have more time to strengthen. So that's a question, right? And then again, a question of dry air. How much dry air will be present here in the mid-levels in the atmosphere to cause this system to potentially weaken? That's a question mark, okay? So, question marks about how much time this will spend over that very warm water. Ultimately, how much dry air will be entrained or put into this system. Let me just show you wind shear values real quick. This is something I've been talking about. So also how much wind shear will be in place over this storm. So wind shear is bad for a tropical system. It causes it to weaken. It rips it apart, right? It's shearing it like cutters. Wind is tearing into that system. Right now you see that it's basically separated from a lot of the shear to the north. So again, that's getting into the core here. Very low values. Very low wind shear values. These are measured in knots. Doesn't matter. Blues or lighter wind shear. Red's very high wind shear. You see that the center, the core of this system is kind of removed from all that right now, right? And so that's what allowing it to strengthen. So we go forward in time. You see it still kind of shrugs off that shear. It's affected a little bit over here with some southerly shear, but this forecast has changed a little bit. Wind shear not playing as much of a part right now if this track holds up and if this model data holds up, this forecast. So you can see again, basically the core of this system removed from that wind shear. So wind shear won't play as much of a part, which would cause weakening. So, okay, there we go. There's three huge question marks. And ultimately what those question marks lead to is the question of how strong will this storm be, when and if. Well, it looks like it's going to impact Florida at this point at some level, some area of Florida. Of course, can't say definitively yet. We got to wait and see how much this storm is affected, whether it moves over land, and maybe how much that dry air affects it. So, I know we come here and we look for answers, right? You want definitive answers. Unfortunately, I can't give them to you. We can say, all right, the track probably somewhere in this point right now, somewhere in this cone, will probably be impacted by this storm, and it probably will be a hurricane, as you see. But what strength will that hurricane ultimately be? That's the big question mark, right? Again, probable that it strikes you as a hurricane, probable within this cone. But then after that, it's like, well, how probable would a stronger hurricane be? Maybe a major hurricane. That is a question. And ultimately, as this discussion reads, your users are reminded to continue monitoring forecasts for any changes to the system's expected intensity as it approaches Florida. Intensity is the strength. So we need to continue to watch. We're going to continue to watch this storm, continuing to watch the models, especially tomorrow. We're going to get a lot more information when those Hurricane Hunter aircraft fly in there and take readings, take measurements within the center of this storm to tell us a lot more about maybe what this system will ultimately do down the road. And one thing that has been kind of creeping up and sort of expected this. I've got a lot of tabs open up here. All right, we're looking at this right here. So this is no, that's not the one. I had it already up. Anyway, intensity guidance. So you've seen this, the shape of this kind of creep up. It was down here at that tropical storm level. Maybe wind shear was going to be a factor. That sort of has changed. Now the intensity guidance is starting to creep upward. You see this even going up into that category 2 level with some of the models. Again, model guidance on intensity on the strength of a storm is notoriously inaccurate 3 to 4 days out, and that's where this model's trying to forecast. You see this after 60 hours, 72, 84 hours, 3-4 days out. It's trying to make or 4 or 5 days out, I should say. It's trying to make a prediction on what that intensity will ultimately be, and again, notoriously inaccurate or at least shaky on what that intensity ultimately will be. So again, time will tell. Showing you just kind of maybe some kind of timing for this system to give you sort of an idea of when you might potentially see impacts. Again, you saw it on the forecast track, but let's kind of hone in here and get a little. Actually, let's use this other model here to give you some sense of potential timing. Again, this is we got to take this with a grain of salt. We're still a few days out, but this maybe could give you an idea of some potential timing on impacts. So we're going to go forward in time with the Euro, continuing. Now we see the system circling around down here, spinning around, and ultimately offshore by 8 a.m. Wednesday. Let's get the earlier run to give you a sense of, give you the ability to see a little bit further out. And again, here you see it potentially making landfall around Wednesday afternoon time frame there at Big Bend, maybe a little further south. That would mean that would speed it up, right? That would mean it would be earlier impacts, maybe in the morning or even late night Tuesday, potentially, if it was to track further to the right, further to the east towards central Florida. It would be later than this if it tracks out towards the west, towards the Panhandle, then maybe this time frame on Wednesday afternoon. Again, a lot of question marks. Let's go ahead and check in on the latest American GFS model and give you a sense of its forecast for timing. Again, it is definitely taking it further west than the Euro. You kind of got this, right now you got this sort of tale of two models where you got the GFS over here towards the west and the ECMWF Euro more towards the east. And again, that's why you kind of see that big forecast, that cone, right? That cone of uncertainty, because that's sort of the two areas where potentially it might go, and then anywhere in between. But as you can see here, it looks like the GFS American is of the latest. Oh, this is the latest run. Sorry, let me give you the afternoon run. Oh, you see it see how it changed from one run to the other? So now it's showing it further to the right. So I think that's kind of why the National Hurricane Center shifted that track rightward, shifted that cone rightward, because it started to see the American model kind of correct over or slide over to the east. And again, you do see a contrast from the Euro, is that this is a faster moving storm according to the American model. You saw the Euro was showing sometime in the afternoon Wednesday. This is showing a little bit earlier in the morning. And since it's further, the track would be a little further to the west. Again, it's a faster moving storm according to the Americans. So there's some kind of sense of timing for you on potential impacts. But bottom line, as we close out for the evening, a lot of questions, a lot of question marks, a lot of uncertainty. Too early to tell exactly what the strength of this system will be. Maybe we're starting to kind of hone in on a track of where it might potentially go, but we're going to know a lot more again in the morning and throughout the day tomorrow as the planes start flying in, the hurricane hunters, and giving us accurate measurements of the core of this system and the environment around this system that will tell us more, will give the computer models more data to crunch and to give us more accurate forecasts to go forward. So that's going to be it for tonight. I'm going to shut it down with that sort of mealy mouth statement. But hey, I mean, meteorologists, what can you do, right? I mean, we have to hedge. We have to be humble before Mother Nature and admit that in the end, these are guesses, these are probabilities, but ultimately, Mother Nature's kind of going to do what it's going to do, and we got to kind of wait and see still a little bit as we move forward. Okay, so I will be back on tomorrow morning before I go into work. That's probably around, let's say, be about 11 a.m. Eastern, a little earlier out here, obviously, in Utah. But that'll be when I'll check in tomorrow. And again, throughout the day tomorrow, I'm going to be posting as well with those new updates on the track forecast, as changes are going to be forthcoming. Changes are going to happen, folks. If you watch these storms